In this video, I'm about to show you 10 plant-based milk brands you need to avoid and why, along with 5 that are actually safe and worth buying. Starting with number 10, Silk. Silk is one of the biggest names in the plant-based milk category, and that popularity is exactly what makes it easy to trust without questioning. It's everywhere: almond milk, soy milk, oat blends, all packaged in a way that suggests you're making a clean, simple, healthier choice the moment you pick it up. The branding is calm, modern, and built around the idea of plant-based better. But the reality is, most Silk products are not simple at all. These are formulated beverages. Not just almonds and water, not just soy and water, but a system built with stabilizers, emulsifiers, and added vitamins designed to recreate what dairy milk naturally provides. Ingredients like gums and lecithins are used to control texture, prevent separation, and keep everything looking smooth and uniform from the first pour to the last. And then there's the nutrition side. Many plant-based milks, especially almond milk, are naturally low in protein. So instead of coming with a strong nutritional base, the product is rebuilt through fortification. Vitamins and minerals are added back in to create the impression of balance. Even the taste is engineered. These products are designed to mimic dairy in terms of texture, the mouthfeel, even the aftertaste. And that's the real takeaway here. Silk isn't just plant milk. It's a carefully constructed version of milk designed to behave like the real thing even when the original ingredients wouldn't. Number 9, Almond Breeze. Almond Breeze is one of those brands that feels simple at first glance. Blue packaging, almond milk written clearly on the front, and a general impression that you're buying something close to blended almonds and water. It looks clean, it sounds clean, and that's exactly where the misunderstanding starts. Because structurally, this is not almond milk as most people imagine. Like most commercial almond milks, Almond Breeze is heavily diluted. A single cup doesn't represent a handful of almonds. It's mostly water, with a very small percentage of actual almond content forming the base. That's not speculation. That's how industrial almond milk is designed to achieve a thin, drinkable consistency at scale. Then comes the reconstruction. To make that diluted base behave like milk, the product relies on stabilizers and emulsifiers, the same category of ingredients used across the industry to control texture and prevent separation. Without them, the product wouldn't hold its structure for more than a short period. Nutritionally, the gap becomes clearer. Natural almonds are known for healthy fats and some protein, but once diluted, that nutritional density drops significantly. What you're left with is a beverage that often carries only around 1 gram of protein per serving, meaning most of its nutritional value is added back through fortification rather than coming from the almonds themselves. Number 8, Oatly. At first glance, Oatly looks like the most modern version of milk you can buy. It's loud on the shelf, confident in its branding, and positioned almost as a lifestyle choice rather than just a beverage. You don't just pick it up as a dairy alternative. It feels like a deliberate switch. But once you move past the branding, the product inside is far more structured than the simplicity it suggests. The base is oats and water, but that alone doesn't create the creamy, milk-like texture people expect. To bridge that gap, plant oils are added to enhance richness and mouthfeel, while stabilizers maintain consistency and prevent separation during storage and heating. These additions make it usable in coffee, foamable in lattes, and smooth for everyday pouring. This is where the reality becomes more engineered than expected. The product is not just blended oats. It's a formulation designed to behave like dairy in every practical situation, from cereal bowls to espresso machines. Nutritionally, that same design approach continues. Since oats alone don't match dairy's protein levels, fortification is used to add back key nutrients like calcium and vitamins such as B12 and D, rebuilding what isn't naturally present in the base ingredient. What you end up with is not just oat milk. It's a designed dairy replacement system built for performance, not simplicity. Number 7, Califia Farms. Califia Farms looks like it belongs in a cafe fridge, not a regular grocery aisle. That's not accidental. The branding is built around that premium lifestyle feeling where plant milk isn't just a substitute, it's part of an aesthetic choice. But the liquid inside doesn't naturally form that experience. Oats and almonds don't behave like dairy once they're blended with water. The texture people associate with creamy milk only occurs after the product is adjusted, fats are introduced in controlled amounts, and stabilizing systems are used to prevent the drink from separating when left on a shelf or when poured into hot coffee. That's why Califia works so well in cafes. It's not just plant-based, it's engineered to withstand heat, foam, and mixing without compromising its structure. And that's where the perception shift happens. Most people think of it as a light, natural alternative, but what they're actually drinking is something designed to behave like milk under stress conditions, espresso machines, steam wands, and refrigeration cycles. Even the nutrition profile follows the same logic. Since the raw ingredients don't naturally match dairy's nutrient density, key vitamins are added back, so the final product aligns with what consumers expect from milk. So what you get isn't just oat or almond water, it's a controlled beverage system built to perform like dairy in environments where consistency matters more than simplicity. Number 6. Planet Oat. Oat milk. Planet Oat doesn't try to look fancy, and that's probably why it ends up in so many shopping carts without much thought. It feels like the safe, middle option. But what sits inside the carton is doing more work than the branding suggests. Oat milk on its own doesn't naturally behave like dairy. If you just blend oats and water, you don't get that smooth, stable liquid people expect in coffee or cereal. It separates, it feels thin, and it doesn't hold structure under heat. So what you actually drink is a version that's been adjusted to behave differently. That's where the product quietly shifts from simple to engineered. It's designed to pour the same way every time, to survive refrigeration, to mix into hot drinks without breaking. That kind of consistency doesn't happen naturally with plant ingredients. It has to be built into the formula. And because oats alone don't match dairy nutritionally, the final product is also adjusted so it doesn't fall short of expectations people associate with milk. The goal isn't just taste, it's behavior. How it looks in coffee, how it foams, how it sits on cereal. Number 5. So Delicious. So Delicious is one of those brands that immediately signals indulgence just from the name. It doesn't sound like a health swap or a technical dairy alternative. It sounds like something you're supposed to enjoy without thinking too hard about it. That branding alone already sets the tone before you even read the carton. But the product inside isn't really about simple plant milk in the natural sense. At first, it feels like you're dealing with coconut, almond, or oat-based drinks that are just blended and bottled. But plant ingredients don't naturally behave like dairy once you add water and put them into long shelf storage. They separate, they thin out, and they lose that smooth consistency people expect when they pour milk into coffee or cereal. So what you actually get is a version that's been built to hold itself together. The liquid is designed to stay stable, pour consistently, and perform the same way every time, whether it's cold from the fridge or mixed into something hot. That's where the identity shifts. It stops being about just plants and starts becoming about controlled behavior in a bottle. Even the flavor is shaped around that idea. Instead of letting raw ingredients define the taste completely, it's tuned so it stays familiar across different uses, not too sharp, not too thin, not unpredictable. The name promises indulgence, but the reality is a carefully built plant-based system designed to act like milk in every everyday situation, where people expect reliability more than simplicity. Number 4. Ripple. Ripple doesn't really behave like the rest of the plant milk aisle. It's not trying to be light almond milk or oat cafe culture. The moment you pick it up, the message is different. This is about protein first, everything else second. And that already changes how you read the product. Instead of building around nuts or grains as the main identity, Ripple builds around pea protein. That shift is important because peas on their own don't naturally give you anything close to a milk-like drink. There's no creamy texture, no natural smoothness, nothing that would make it feel familiar in a glass. So what you end up with is something reconstructed a liquid where the original plant source has been broken down and reassembled into a completely different form. The goal isn't to preserve the pea anymore. The goal is to extract function from it. That's why it feels thicker than most almond milks. Not because peas are creamy, but because the protein system is doing the heavy lifting. But even then, nothing here is left in a natural state. The drink has to stay stable, pour evenly, and behave like milk whether it's cold, mixed, or sitting in a fridge for days. That consistency doesn't happen by accident. It's designed into the system. Ripple ends up in an unusual position. It doesn't pretend to be just plants. It behaves more like a functional protein drink trying to fill the role of milk in a very controlled, engineered way. Number 3. Blue Diamond. Blue Diamond feels familiar before you even think about it. The brand name itself carries that classic grocery staple energy, like it's been around long enough to be considered normal, not questioned. And that's exactly why its almond milk often slips into carts without much hesitation. But what's inside is far removed from the idea of simply blended almonds. The reality starts with dilution. Almond milk at this scale isn't a dense nut extract, it's a heavily watered down base, where almonds play more of a supporting role than a dominant one. The goal is not richness from nuts, but a drinkable texture that behaves like milk in everyday use. Once you remove the natural structure of almonds, the product has to be rebuilt into something stable. That's where the engineered part comes in, keeping it from separating, making it smooth enough to pour, and ensuring it doesn't feel thin or inconsistent after sitting in a carton for days. And then there's the expectation gap. Almonds are often associated with healthy fats and nutrition, but in liquid form and this dilution level, that identity changes completely. The final drink doesn't carry the same density as whole almonds. It relies on formulation to create a milk-like experience instead. What Blue Diamond really represents is the standard version of almond milk most people encounter first, not because it's the most natural expression of almonds, but because it's been adjusted to fit the role of milk in a modern kitchen, even if that means moving away from the ingredient in its original form. Number 2. Great Value Almond Milk. Great Value Almond Milk sits in a very specific corner of the plant-based aisle. Not premium, not niche, just the default budget option people grab when they want something dairy-free without overthinking it. The packaging is plain, the branding is minimal, and the message is simple. It's supposed to do the job. But what it does and what people assume it is are two different things. At its core, this isn't a direct almond-to-liquid experience in any strong sense. The almond base is heavily stretched with water, which is what allows the product to stay affordable and widely available. That dilution changes everything about how it behaves: texture, density, even the way it feels in a glass. Because once you remove the natural richness of almonds, the drink has to be rebuilt into something that still feels like milk. So the structure is adjusted to keep it stable, smooth, and consistent across storage time. Without that kind of formulation, it would naturally separate or feel too thin to function like a milk substitute. What's interesting is how neutral it feels in practice. It doesn't try to stand out with bold taste or heavy creaminess. It's designed to disappear into coffee, cereal, or recipes without drawing attention to itself. But that neutrality is also the product's identity. It's not trying to showcase almonds, it's trying to behave like a basic milk replacement at the lowest possible cost point. Number 1. 365 by Whole Foods. 365 by Whole Foods Market has that safe choice reputation built into it before you even touch the carton. The Whole Foods label quietly signals cleaner eating, more thoughtful ingredients, and a product that sits above the standard grocery options. That expectation alone shapes how people approach it, as if the brand itself guarantees simplicity. But the liquid inside doesn't actually come from that perception. Almond milk at this level isn't a rich nut extract. It's a heavily diluted base, where almonds play a supporting role rather than the main structure. That dilution is what makes it affordable and widely available, but it also strips away most of the natural density people associate with almonds. And once that natural structure is gone, the product has to be rebuilt into something usable. It needs to pour smoothly, stay consistent in coffee, and not separate after sitting in a fridge. That stability doesn't happen naturally. It's designed into the formula so the drink behaves like milk in everyday situations. What makes 365 interesting is the contrast between perception and reality. The branding suggests something closer to a cleaner plant option, but the actual product follows the same industrial logic as other almond milks controlled consistency over natural expression. It doesn't try to be bold or flashy. It tries to be acceptable in every situation where someone would normally use milk. And in that sense, 365 isn't really about almonds. It's about making a diluted base behave like a reliable dairy replacement without drawing attention to how much processing sits behind it. But don't worry, it's not all bad. There are actually 5 plant-based milk brands that are better choices, cleaner in ingredients, more balanced, and genuinely worth your money. Starting with number 5, Elmhurst Milked Nuts. Elmhurst feels like the brand that quietly walks away from the plant milk performance race. No loud claims, no over-designed identity, just a very controlled, almost old-school food philosophy. What's interesting is how intentional the simplicity feels. Instead of building a drink that tries to behave like dairy in every possible situation, it leans into a more restrained identity. You can actually sense that in the texture. It doesn't chase thickness or engineered creaminess the way most mainstream brands do. There's also a kind of honesty in how it presents itself. It doesn't rely on heavy stabilizer systems to create long shelf stability at any cost. That decision alone changes the personality of the product. It feels less like a lab-designed beverage and more like a minimally processed extraction. Elmhurst doesn't try to win you over with imitation. It's closer to saying, this is what the ingredient becomes when you don't push it too far. Number 4, Malk Organics. Malk has a very different energy. It feels like it was built for people who actively read labels, not just glance at them. The branding is sharp, almost defiant, like it's reacting against everything overly engineered in the plant milk aisle. Where most brands add layers to improve texture and stability, Malk goes in the opposite direction. It keeps things tight, minimal, almost stripped back to a point where you can actually sense the base ingredient instead of a heavily modified final product. That choice creates a very specific experience. The drink doesn't always behave with perfect uniformity, and that's kind of the point. It's not trying to erase the identity of what it's made from. Instead of chasing a milk replica, Malk feels more like a transparent version of plant processing. Less about disguise, more about showing what's actually there, even if that means the texture feels slightly less engineered than mainstream competitors. Number 3, 3 Trees. 3 Trees feels like it belongs in a completely different category from mainstream plant milks. The first thing you notice is how minimal everything is. Not just the ingredient philosophy, but the overall presentation. It doesn't act like a mass-market beverage trying to replace milk in every situation. What stands out is the texture identity. Instead of pushing for heavy creaminess or engineered uniformity, it leans into a more natural nut profile. You can actually sense that it's not trying to fully erase the base ingredient, it's letting it exist in a more recognizable form. There's also a noticeable restraint in how it's built. It doesn't rely on the typical overstructured systems that many plant milks use to guarantee long shelf stability and perfect consistency. That creates a product that feels less manufactured dairy replica and more minimally processed nut extraction. 3 Trees doesn't compete by imitation. It competes by staying closer to origin. Number 2, New Barn Organics. New Barn Organics has a very specific identity. It sits between mainstream convenience and clean label philosophy. It doesn't feel overly experimental, but it also doesn't behave like a heavily engineered industrial plant milk. What makes it stand out is balance. The product still needs to perform in everyday use, coffee, cereal, cooking, but it doesn't push extreme texture modification to achieve that. Instead, it stays closer to a simplified version of almond-based beverages. There's a noticeable effort to keep the formula from feeling overloaded. That creates a drink that feels more direct, less masked, and less dependent on heavy structural additives compared to conventional shelf-stable alternatives. It's not trying to reinvent plant milk. It's trying to refine it, reduce unnecessary complexity, while still keeping it functional in real-world use. That middle ground positioning is what defines its personality in this category. Number 1, Orgain Plant Milk. Orgain comes from a very different mindset. It's not just positioned as a plant milk, but as part of a broader nutrition system that immediately shifts how it behaves in the market. Instead of focusing only on ingredient simplicity, Orgain leans into functional nutrition, protein content, fortified nutrients, and meal support positioning. It's designed less like a light beverage and more like something that can actively replace a nutritional role in the diet. That changes the entire structure of the product. The formulation is built not just for taste or texture, but for nutritional delivery. Protein blends and added vitamins become central to its identity rather than secondary enhancements. At the same time, it still needs to behave like milk in everyday use, which means maintaining smoothness, stability, and consistency across different temperatures and applications. Orgain sits in the functional plant milk space less about purity, more about performance and nutrition in a ready-to-drink format.